Good evening, hello and welcome to BrassTacks. I'm Anusha Soni. All hell broke loose today when the National Herald office was sealed by the Enforcement Directorate today evening. The Congress party has called the move an open threat and intimidation tactic by the BJP. Well, this is an investigation underway for over 7 years now after the original complainant in the case, Dr. Subramaniam Swamy, moved a plea before a local court. This is a case that has come to haunt the Congress party and its top leadership, including Rahul Gandhi and Mrs. Sonia Gandhi. The non-functional National Herald newspaper was started by none other than India's first Prime Minister, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, back in 1938. The newspaper had hundreds of freedom fighters as its shareholders at one point in time. Now look at the irony of it. The same newspaper is in the limelight because allegedly its assets and proceeds have been illegally laundered. The matter is sub judice, still under investigation, but with each raid, each round of questioning, and at every step of the way, this case fuels a political war between the BJP and the Congress. An open witch hunt, or the law taking its due course, or I would rather say the pending course, our top focus.
This is the Herald House where I am standing at this moment. It has been completely sealed. The fourth floor, rather, has been sealed, which belongs to the Young Indian.
You are treating this institution, this party, these leaders as terrorists?
ये प्रतिशोध की राजनीति, ये धमकी की राजनीति।
Well, joining us on the broadcast are my colleagues who've been tracking this story from the ground. We have Siddhant Mishra. He's right outside the AICC headquarters. We also have Arun Dhata, who's been tracking all the details live from the Herald House. And my colleague Ashish Mahesh is also joining us live. First, coming to you, Siddhant, tell us about the mood at the AICC headquarters. Clearly, the Congress party was in a huddle today evening.
Well, that's right. Congress party was in the huddle, and in fact, the reason was that in the afternoon they received this confirmation from Delhi police that they are not allowed to go ahead with the protest on August 5th. And this is perhaps the reason that it was decided in the parliament that all senior Congress party leaders and in fact the other leaders will meet at AICC. Now this message reached Delhi police top bosses, and immediately the security was beefed up at Akbar Road. And in fact, other than this, there is one specific input also which Delhi police has received, which says that that there is a possibility of chaos on that very day. And this is also perhaps the reason that for the first time Delhi police beefed up the security in and around AICC 24 hours before the protest. Right now we are reporting from Rahul Gandhi's residence. He is expected to land at around 9:15 and he'll reach his residence by 9:40. So today there's going to be no meeting at all. Tomorrow there's one crucial meeting which is scheduled to take place to make a strategy regarding the protest. The permission has already been denied. What is going to be the plan of action on August 5th? And also, along with the AICC, the security outside Rahul Gandhi's residence was also beefed up. All three corners were cordoned off completely. And in fact, the senior leaders like Chidambaram and others did come to Rahul Gandhi's residence to take stock of the situation here, as Mr. Gandhi was not at his residence at that time. He was in Karnataka. So this is the update from ground.
And Siddhant, as you're pointing out, a security measure taken by the Delhi police authorities. I want to cut across to my colleague Arun Dhata as well, who's live with us from the Herald House. Arun, you've been tracking all the details all evening, and we saw the ruckus that was there yesterday and the kind of problems that the police had even today when that notice was pasted at the fourth floor. Tell us all that transpired today evening.
Well, see, Anusha, I am outside the Herald House, and this is the building right behind me in which the Young Indian office is located on the 4th floor. So what happened today, that the salutes of Enforcement Directorate arrived here in the Herald House, and they wanted to, complete their searches, in addition to what they did yesterday. Perhaps they couldn't do it properly, and therefore they wanted, to search the Young Indians office today as well. So when they arrived here, there was nobody present here in the office, and therefore, they had to paste these two notices. First one is on the ground floor. Straight away when you enter the building, on the left side you have a notice of Enforcement Directorate, and the second notice is on the 4th floor, which clearly states that without the permission of Enforcement Directorate, nobody is allowed to open the office.
Yeah.
And in fact, post that, we had seen the press conference of the Congress party. Even yesterday, when Enforcement Directorate raided this particular head office of the National Herald, we had seen Congress workers gathered outside this building. In fact, the top leaders like Mallikarjun Kharge, Jairam
That's
Ramesh,
right.
they all came here. They went inside. They were inside the Young Indians office for a bit, and then spoke to media when they came out, and clearly, saying that it was vendetta politics which agencies and government is doing, and
Okay.
therefore, in coming few days, we'll see, more such action coming from the Enforcement Directorate side.
It's an ongoing investigation, and the agency can take any course which is permitted under law. The only question is what kind of politics we are likely to witness in the next few days. Ashish, I'm coming to you as well. I want you to give us a word and context and perspective to this. While the names which are allegedly involved in this money laundering are very high-profile cases, but at the end of the day, it's an investigation which is going on. The Enforcement Directorate will conduct raids, they will do rounds of questioning. But this notice which has been stuck on the 4th floor today, does it technically amount to sealing, or there's a caveat to it?
So, one has to understand that I don't see, in fact, I'm a little perplexed to understand the reason for the protest of Congress. Obviously, there is a political twist to the entire story, reason being that Young Indian is basically owned by Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi. They both own major equity.
Yeah.
Now, the searches happened yesterday at the Herald House. There were around 10 to 12 locations which were covered. This location, all locations in fact, have to be searched in the premises of somebody who owns that property or the office bearer. Somebody has to be there, because tomorrow then the owner of the premises can say that the Enforcement Directorate came and stole the data or whatever. So here the searches have to happen in somebody's premises, in somebody's presence as well. So here in the Young Indian office, when the Enforcement Directorate team reached, nobody was there. So they sealed the premises and said that once somebody comes over, and in this case Mallikarjun Kharge, who is the current principal officer, he has been asked to join investigation, and said that we want to complete the search and please come over once the Enforcement Directorate team is there. So it will be interesting to see if Mallikarjun Kharge joins investigation or not. But
Absolutely.
the only thing that Enforcement Directorate wanted to do was they wanted to complete the search.
Sure.
And once a search warrant has been issued, then obviously then the process of law has to be followed. So here the process of law needs to be completed, and that is.
My colleague Ashish Maheshi getting us all the perspective about the investigation that continues to go on. Before I open this debate for our guests, there's some breaking information that my colleague Pallavi gets for you. And the Congress party is all set to raise adjournment notice tomorrow on ED sealing the National Herald House, we mean the 4th floor, which pertains to the property which is allegedly under scanner, and gherawing of the Congress office. They want to raise all these issues on the floor of the House. Our senior editor Pallavi Ghosh with us on the broadcast. Pallavi, over to you. What is expected tomorrow?
Well, I think it's going to be yet another day of hangama in Parliament, and they're going to use today's incidents to actually rake up an issue against the government that, look, they're misusing the ED and the CBI once again. So very too quickly before I come back to you, Anusha, one, of course, what they're going to ask in adjournment notice is, why is it that there was a police bandobast outside the residence of Sonia Gandhi, who is a Z security protectee, and the Congress headquarters? Why is it that the area was completely cordoned off? And two, why was there a need to even seal one particular floor or office of a Herald House when every leader from the Congress party is actually cooperating with investigations. Let's also not forget today has been an important and significant development. All opposition political parties actually have come on together to actually write a letter to the Supreme Court, and also to make the point that there should be a review of that recent verdict which we saw on the PMLA. The insinuation is that this is a verdict which goes and could be misused by the government, which means it will be easier for the government to misuse the ED and the CBI against their political opponents, to use the words of the opposition party.
Thank you, Pallavi, for putting that in perspective. And review petitions rarely meet with success in the Supreme Court. The fact that this judgment was given after much debate. So legally speaking, the routes are very, very limited. Joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Shehzad Poonawala. He is the BJP spokesperson. We also have Mr. Charan Singh Sapra from the Congress party. Mr. Rashid Kidwai, who is an author, is also joining us on the broadcast. We also have Kailash Adhikari, who is a political analyst and managing director at Governance Now, and Swapnil Kothari, who is a senior lawyer, is also joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Sapra, let's open the debate with you. A simple question. This is an ongoing investigation. The law is taking its course. Why the hangama? Mr. Sapra, am I audible to you?
Voice is not coming.
Mr. Sapra, we'll try and just fix that connection for you. Meanwhile, let me go to our other guests as well who are with us on the broadcast. Shehzad, I'm coming to you and taking your view. There was a press conference that was done by the Congress party today evening, and they've called this an open intimidation and threat by the BJP misusing the agencies. Respond to that.
You know, this has become a part and parcel of the 4 pillars of corruption, the Aam Aadmi Party, Uddhav Sena, Congress and the TMC. First of all, this is a court order, the trial court order, in which it has been said that Young Indian was used as a special purpose vehicle to use up 2,000 crores. It was upheld by the High Court and the Supreme Court. Is the court doing vindictive politics? The income tax assessment order was challenged by them in High Court, Supreme Court. They got no relief in it. Instead of answering questions and instead of being answerable to the ED, they are silent before ED and they are violent on the streets. And we've seen what kind of display of violence they've done on the streets, including holding the cops by the collar. So is that cooperating with the law or confronting with the law? Thirdly, is there immunity to do corruption? What kind of new standard is this, that the courts come and rule on you prima facie, and instead of cooperating with them, you say you play the victimhood card? This is the same Congress, by the way. Look at the hypocrisy. When action was taken against Satyendra Jain, here they declared that please immediately Satyendra Jain should be sacked. So if the ED acts on Satyendra Jain, it is chamatkar, and on them it is gunekar. So this is their double standards. We are asking certain simple questions. First of all, if there is so much of vindictiveness in this entire matter, how come in so many years, despite the likes of Chidambaram and Mr. Singhvi, you got no relief from any court of law? You're still out on bail. Are these observations by court or findings by court, not observations, or also vindictive? So, you know, this is just to play the victimhood card and to get an immunity from corruption. They must answer the questions and they should cooperate with the law, not confront the law. But unfortunately, they are AICC, All India Confrontation Committee.
Mr. Charan Singh Sapra, I hope you were able to hear some points that Shehzad has raised. But the primary argument that the BJP is making is that these are agencies. These are agencies doing their job. They are investigating a matter. A matter is sub judice. Why are you making a hue and cry about it? Is the Congress party above law? That's the question BJP is asking you.
See, nobody is above law in this country. Basically, Congress party is questioning the selective targeting of opposition leaders by the ED department. You know, the ED has been used for political fixing also. And the way we have seen in the last 8 years, Shehzad just now, he mentioned some of the opposition leaders. I just want to ask the same, that in last 8 years, ED did not raid any BJP leader, number one. Number two, what about why ED is not following up the cases of Hemanta Biswa, Suvendu Roy, or Narayan Rane, or maybe Yedurappa and so many other leaders. This Hemanta Biswa was called a panichor when he was in Congress party. But when he went there in BJP, he became the chief minister. Narayan Rane was a BrassTacks when he was in Congress. But when he went to BJP, he became a Sadachari. So, and Suvendu, if you remember, he was said, Bhag Suvendu Bhag. And now what is happening?
Mr. Sapra,
so ED is doing selective targeting. That's the question which Congress party is raising.
Yeah, Shehzad, I'll just come to you. Let me just add one point. Mr. Sapra, while the whataboutery of what you're saying might be a prima facie political defense, but the fact that when ED conduct raids and there are crores of rupees which are found at the houses of the opposition leaders, or when a matter goes on like in a National Herald case for so long and there is no relief granted by the court, clearly your argument is not that there is no merit to the case. Clearly there is merit to the case. Are you conceding that?
See, let's first detach two cases. You are trying to mention the Partha case and the National Herald case. Both the cases cannot be compared.
Sir, you mentioned a couple of cases, so I just wanted to respond to you in the same way.
Please.
Yes,
see, when I am talking now, I can't listen to your supplementary question because the voice goes away.
Okay,
that is the fact now.
Please go ahead.
So please hear me out.
Yeah.
Then I can hear your question. Please.
Yes.
So the issue is that both the cases are different. Now, as far as National Herald case is concerned, this case is going on since 10 years, a decade-old case. This case was closed by ED itself in 2015, and then again it was reopened. Still, we have no problem. ED can investigate. They have called Rahul Gandhi ji. They have asked him. They have grilled him for 50 hours, more than 50 hours. They have called Srimati Sonia Gandhi for 3 days. They have grilled her also. They have today put a seal on Young India office. So the way ED is acting, it looks as if it is working like a puppet. And puppet works like what the puppeteer wants.
I want Shehzad also to come into the discussion. Shehzad, please respond.
He said not a single case where ED is acted because they're selective. Here are two cases in front of you. ED acted on a Surat BJP leader, 2.7 crores was seized, and he was taken action against. IT raided apparently somebody close to Mr. Yedurappa's son. Now, this demolishes his argument that ED is acting selectively. But I'm saying, for the sake of
let him finish. Mr. Sapra, I give you the opportunity. Please let him finish.
Let's assume that the ED is selective, malicious, and vindictive. In the last 8 years, you couldn't go to a court of law and get one evidence of calling it a caged parrot like it was called. The CBI was called under your tenure. In fact, you went to the Supreme Court to challenge various provisions and the functioning of the ED under PMLA, and the Supreme Court threw that case also out, where Mr. Karti Chidambaram and others went. So I am asking you, let's put our money where the mouth is. Forget allegations you make, allegations I make, you made against Khadse, now you've taken Khadse. Forget all of that. When a court of law comes up with a prima facie order, for Satyendra Jain you have one stand, and for Sonia Gandhi you have another stand. And please tell me in the last 8 years, one instance where Mr. Chidambaram Singhvi, much better lawyers than any of us in this panel, have gone to a court of law and said, this is the BJP acting maliciously using the ED. You've not been able to get that.
All right, Mr. Sapra, before you respond to what Shehzad said, Mr. Sapra, please allow me one question. Before you respond to what Shehzad said, and this is the point I was trying to understand from you earlier as well, while you may call this vindictive, none of the courts since 2015 to now, ever since Dr. Subramaniam Swamy launched his complaint, has given you the sort of relief that you wanted. There are multiple orders that can be legally argued not favoring the Congress party. So are you saying that by the logic of whataboutery or political witch hunt, you might be able to make a political point, but on the merits of the case, clearly there is some merit that the Enforcement Directorate is trying to probe?
See, even if the court has not given us the required relief, let me then point out that we have, even if we have got the bail, we have got as per the provision in the law. And secondly, since last 10 years, why the ED has not filed a FIR? What is the offence that is not declared as yet? So these are the issues which basically Congress party is also asking. They have the entire money trail. What was AGL? AGL was under loss, and Congress party has given a loan of 90 crores. That is over a span of 10 years, and it is into 100 tranches. It is not given at one shot. And even after giving that loan was given to, give away the gratuity, the provident fund, and the salaries of the people who are working with AGL. Now, even if AGL has not given away the loan,
Mr. Sapra, I don't want to comment on the merits. I don't want to comment on the merits and evidence of a sub judice matter.
Debt to equity.
Yes, it is a question of debt to equity, and there are questions over the transactions that have happened. Were they motivated transactions? I'll come back to Mr. Sapra and Shehzad. I want to bring in other panelists as well.
Lie that he's perpetrated.
Please go ahead, Shehzad. Make a brief point, then I'll go to the other panelists.
You know, Anusha, because you cover courts, there's no FIR in ED matters. There's an
ECIR. Yes.
And the ECIR, by the way, does not have to be shared with the accused,
as
has been clarified by the Supreme Court. Secondly, in this matter, ECIR, please, Mr.
Sapra, I'll come to you. I'll give you the opportunity to respond. I'll give you the opportunity to respond, Mr. Sapra.
In this particular case, the ECIR or an FIR is the starting of an investigation, then court takes cognizance. In this matter, the court had directly taken cognizance of a private criminal complaint in 2012-13. And they had said that 403, 406, 420 with 120B has to be applied. And these are all predicate offences under Section 3 of PMLA to start a ED investigation. So Mr. Sapra should stop lying.
But Shehzad, on that point, and legally speaking, but on that point, shouldn't there have been an ECIR in the first place? You're right that there are predicate offences.
I'm telling you, on record, there is an ECIR in this matter. The court has taken cognizance of it. And secondly, if there was no ECIR and they've investigated Mr. Motilal Vora, Oscar Fernandez, they've seized assets. All this while Chidambaram couldn't go to court and say there's no ECIR in this matter.
So Mr.
Congress should not lie about these things.
So there is a direct point that Shehzad is making, that there is an ECIR which has already been filed. Mr. Rashid Kidwai, please come into this discussion. When you see the political optics of this entire matter really play out, I'm sure you're not surprised. This is a high-profile case. The Congress party, of course, says this is a witch hunt which is going on. The ED says they have a case to make. How do you view these developments? What lies ahead? More political fireworks?
Absolutely, Anusha. It's a very very interesting development, because the opposition, particularly the Congress, is seen as as unreasonable, as someone which is standing for prestige, for the honor of its leaders, having some kind of disregard for courts and for agencies and all. But truth of the matter is slightly different. Anusha, me and you, we all have seen there were 10 years of UPA. There were many allegations were there, whether it was Commonwealth Games or 2G or coal scam. So I would expect, the BJP government, when it came in 2014 onwards, to come up with something more substantive against, the Gandhis than this National Herald case. I don't want to comment on National Herald case because the matter is sub judice, and I frankly do not have that kind of information that my dear fellow panelists have. So I'm saying this is some. And second thing, a very basic thing as a citizen of this country. See, we have a somewhat corrupt political system. The poll expenses ceiling is 50 lakh for assembly and 75 lakh for parliament. We know that every political party of significance spends 5 times, 10 times more than that. And how is it? I know Shehzad has pointed out 2-3 cases of some BJP fellow or people associated with BJP. How is it that in every second case of corruption we have an opposition entity? These are the things. These are the questions that need to be asked and debated. This is not to give clean sheet to the Congress. If there is a case against Rahul, he should be arrested tonight.
All right. I want to bring in a brief response from Shehzad and Mr. Sapra both. Mr. Sapra, first to you. Various leaders of the opposition and the Congress party went to the court and challenged the PMLA Act. Never mind that this act was very much in force when the UPA was in power. And the same Enforcement Directorate was under the command of the then ruling government, which was a UPA government. If the agencies like ED can be misused and PMLA can be misused, it would have been misused under your government as well. Now, if the BJP is saying that we are making sure that the due process of law takes its course, what's wrong about that? The PMLA existed under the Congress rule as well, didn't it?
See, we never misused, and like rightly Mr. Kidwai now said, he mentioned about CWG and coal cases. Let me also remind you that under our regime, A. Raja was also imprisoned, and Kanimori, Dayanidhi Maran, or maybe Suresh Kalmadi, maybe Janardhan Reddy. And so Congress was not biased during its tenure. But here we are seeing that since 8 years, not a single BJP leader. Now, let me also point out, when Shehzad was talking, there was one Piyush Jain. He was raided in Kanpur by ED and 275 crores cash. The entire media showed. That Piyush Jain is out on bail, and BJP leaders helped him to get bail because he was closer to the BJP leaders. So why they are not investigating that? Why they are not investigating the Meghalaya where BJP leader, the vice president of BJP, Bernard Marak, he is involved into prostitution racket? Why that is not being investigated?
Okay, Shehzad,
I can give you names of all the opposition
please
leaders
respond to all the allegations that Mr. Sapra is making. And one more point I'd like to add. Shehzad, you might want to respond to this as well. While you may have pointed out to certain cases of a Gujarat BJP leader or various other leaders which have been probed by the Enforcement Directorate, the argument of the opposition is that no other high-profile name has been under the scanner of the Enforcement Directorate or CBI, especially people who were earlier in the opposition camp and have now shifted to the BJP. Response.
First of all, you need to have bravado on steroids to come and say that in our time there was no allegation on the agency. The Supreme Court said caged parrot. And I remember Anusha used to cover courts, and in the last 8 years no such observation or finding has come against any agency under Modi government. तो झूठ बोलने की भी सीमा होती है चरणजीत जी. आप तो अच्छे इंसान हैं. आप सुन लीजिए चरणजीत जी, I did not interrupt. चरणजीत जी
बोलने दीजिए उनको. मैं आपके पास
आपको
वापस आ
इंटरप्ट नहीं किया ना. आप क्यों बौखला जाते हैं भाई, सड़कों पर.
सापरा जी उनको बोलने.
सुन लीजिए एक बात. दूसरी बात, second point is that the entire night their argument is, अरे उसको क्यों नहीं पकड़ा, इसको क्यों नहीं पकड़ा. In law, in criminal law, is this a defense? that murderer has taken place and you have not caught that murderer, hence my murderer is maaf.
No,
that
but
is not a defense.
Shehzad, you're right. Legally, that's not a defense.
Yeah, exactly. So
Shehzad, legally, that's not a defense, but there is also an argument of political morality,
now
isn't it?
Coming
Please
to
come to
political
that.
morality.
Yes.
I make an allegation of Charanjit. Charanjit makes an allegation of me. I don't want to remind Charanjit of the statements they made in defense of Mr. Biswa Sarma and in defense of Mr. Khadse and many other personalities who are now with them or who are now with us. So let's go by one standard. Court ne jo bola hai. In Satyendra Jain matter, court has said something. In Partha matter, court has said something. In Uddhav matter, the remand has been given of Sanjay Raut by a court. And in Congress matter, court has said something. But when court says something, these people come and say, nee, this is all vendetta and vindictive. Are courts vindictive? Chaliye, BJP is vindictive, Modi is vindictive, Shehzad is vindictive. Let's go by what courts are saying. Now, finally, now Mr. Rashid Kidwai, I have great respect for him, but Mr. Rashid Kidwai, is this an editorial line that I have to monkey balance? Ki iske baare mein kuch likha to uske baare mein bhi kuch likhna hai? Sir, if BJP is not doing corruption, I should pick up 2 BJP people because Congress is fully corrupt. So this is not an editorial line ki kuch article likhna hai to 2 gali Congress ko de de,
that's not a fair comment on the editorial line.
I did not mention it for any personal.
No.
If somebody is taking it personally, they have understood where it hits.
No, Shehzad, another point that Mr. Kidwai raised was that there were very serious scam allegations that were made during the UPA era that led, rightly so, to the downfall of the UPA. It included coal scam, 2G. How come when this government came to power, none of those investigations could actually secure the kind of prosecutions and the kind of, convictions that one would have anticipated in the beginning?
Okay, so now in many of those matters, we know that the prosecution had started under a corrupt UP and how they destroyed the evidence in many matters. I can come and discuss that in detail, whichever matter he wants. But having said that, either we are vindictive and we would have convicted them or we would have put them in jail the first night we came to power, or we are allowing the law process to play out. What are we first decide that? Are we vindictive or are we allowing the process of law?
And that's a fair point you're making. That's a fair point you're making. I want to bring in Kailash Adhikari and Swapnil Kothari both into the discussion. They've been patiently waiting. Kailash, coming to you first. This entire controversy, Enforcement Directorate says we are only following the much pending due process of law. Do not make this political. Congress party calls it a political witch hunt. In the next few days, how do you see this matter really playing out in the political arena?
Anusha, nowadays it has become a fashion by the opposition political parties to call any action that is taken by the investigative agencies as a political witch hunt. Now, they are very competent agencies. We all know they are run by very competent people who are very qualified people, and they are doing their job. And in this particular case, it is not something which has cropped up overnight or which has cropped up just like 15 days ago. It is going on since past a decade, and there have been incriminating evidences. So naturally, the investigative agencies will take no cognizance of that. The court has taken, the judiciary has taken cognizance of that, and on the basis of which the investigative agencies are doing their job. Now, they are following due procedure of law. Now, on the basis of this, creating a furor, on the streets of the national capital, not allowing the parliament to function. I mean, in whose benefit it is? The people of the country, finally, they want the parliament to function. And when they see that the opposition is just on these particular, their own political grounds, if they're not getting satisfied and they're doing this, naturally, the people of the country are watching it.
Okay, Swapnil, you want to come in there? The Enforcement Directorate is investigating the matter. Many argue that the Enforcement Directorate or the central agencies, even CBI, in various high-profile cases is not able to secure the conviction. It begins with a lot of political fireworks, debates in TV studio, but when it comes to actual conviction, it is very difficult to prove the PMLA offence because the burden of proof, of course, is high on the accused, but also on the agency because they need to prove the intent behind a certain transaction.
Well, to a certain extent, it's definitely true, Anusha. The conviction rate of the Enforcement Directorate is absolutely abysmal. But that does not detract from the fact that they are empowered under the PMLA to investigate, to conduct a search and seizure, to even seal properties the way that they've done it today. I would consider that as sealing because even if that, they've locked it up and nobody can enter those premises because they want to conduct a search and they want to conduct with somebody who's possibly aware of the things that they are and where they're kept. Now, having said that, all this political chicanery and, the point that this is vindictiveness, this is vendetta, politics, all of those arguments, look very nice when it comes to TV studios and debates. But at the point when it comes to a court of law, none of those arguments are ever raised by the defense lawyers because you cannot bypass the fact that this money which has been laundered is in question. There is a 90 crore loan and there is an appropriation of the property or misappropriation of property worth about 5,000 crores.
Yeah.
So obviously something like 403 IPC, 406 IPC, 120B, which is criminal breach of trust, criminal conspiracy, dishonest misappropriation of property, all of those sections are attracted under the IPC, including predicated offences, which are predicated offences under Section 3 of the PMLA Act. And obviously the arrest will be made at some point, which I would assume in the future, if there is incriminating more so evidence and pointing at the accused who are unwilling to cooperate.
On that note, you've hit a raw nerve, and let me bring in Mr. Charan Singh Sapra of the Congress Party back into the discussion. Mr. Sapra, for any investigation, if there are certain people who are under the scanner of an agency, what will the ED do? The ED is going to raid your premises, it's going to investigate you, it's going to question you for multiple rounds, and if the agency thinks fit, they might demand custodial interrogation. The argument of the BJP is, or the charge of the BJP is, that the first family thinks they are above law. Answer that, please.
No, it's not like that. See, the first family, nobody said it's above law. First family, Rahul Gandhi was called and he was questioned for 50 hours. He went over there. Even Sonia Ji went over there. And the basic thing in this issue is that all the transactions are very clear. They are transparent. Whatever money was transferred in 100 tranches in a span of 10 years from Congress party to AGL was done legally. And it was done after discussing it with the shareholders also and after bringing it to the notice of Election Commission. And the further transaction of Young India, which was debt to equity, even that was a white transaction, a legitimate transaction. So there is no laundering of money. Where is money laundering?
Mr. Sapra, my question was different. My question was different,
Let me complete.
My question was different, sir. My question was different. What I want to ask from you is that you say that the Gandhi family or the Congress party or whoever is the accused in this case is going to cooperate with the protest, with the process of law. But then why do we see chakka jams? Why do we see protests on the road? There is disruption in the parliament which is done. The argument of your political critics is that you use this issue to stop the process of law and not really comply with it.
No, nobody is trying to stop the law. We are just executing our democratic right. If we have a democratic right to keep an issue in the parliament, we are keeping in the parliament. If we have a democratic right to protest, see, like BJP has a democratic right or ED has a democratic right to, raid a particular office. Even we have a democratic right to protest. We are just trying to express our feeling. Dissent is allowed in democracy. This is not Hitler Raj.
Okay. Shehzad, come in there. I'd give you the last word, but there's another point I want to add to which you can respond. The entire argument, what you said, that, either we are vindictive or we are not vindictive. If we were vindictive, we would have ensured that there is malicious prosecution that happens in a cold scam or 2G. But the argument is that the BJP is trying to create some kind of political controversy. This is some kind of headline management which is happening only to character assassinate. That's what Mr. Sapra said. Please respond.
The High Court of Delhi said Mr. Jain is a criminal background man. The lower court said take cognizance against him for the charge sheet. The High Court of Delhi has upheld the trial court's order against Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi. Are they also being managed by as to headline management? Now, secondly, democratic right. Renuka Chaudhary holds the collar of a cop. Democratic right. Ms. Neta D'Souza spits on a cop. They say that they'll burn cars in Nagpur. They will go and beat up cops in Assam. Is this democratic right? Is this satyagraha or hatyagraha? And lastly, he said that the transaction was clear. Now, Mr. Sapra, you can't interrupt me every time I'm making a point. That's undemocratic of you to become a Shaheen Bagh on this debate. Please now, sir, please don't interrupt.
Mr. Sapra, we are towards the end of the debate. We are towards the end of the debate.
Please,
Anusha,
I beg
Mr. Poonawala, please go ahead and make your point.
Anusha, I beg your
Mr. Sapra, please allow him to
First of all, AJL had 1,000+ shareholders, including freedom fighters. Here is the ANI copy. Mr. Shanti Bhushan, not a friend of ours, says that the transaction whereby the shares of AJL were transferred to Young Indians, which had only 2 shareholders mainly, Rahul and Sonia, was illegally done. Indian Express also covered the same. AJL did not inform us or obtain approval before equity transfers as shareholders. These are people like Markandeya Kaju. Is this fair? Secondly, why I was created only just to take over the assets or the ownership of the assets of AJL.
I'm running short of time. I'm running short of time, Mr. Poonawala. Shehzad. Mr. Sapra, I have 20 seconds, a brief argument from you. That's all the time I have.
See, that's what I'm saying, that whatever Shehzad is saying, it seems that he's thinking BJP is above law. They can do anything if they want. They are trying that. But Congress party will fight to save the constitution. We'll fight to save corruption. The rule of law. We
All
will
right.
fight BJP.
Mr. Shehzad Poonawala, Mr. Charanjit Singh Sapra, Rashid Kidwai, Kailash Adhikari, Swapnil Kothari. Thank you everyone for joining us on the broadcast. One thing is abundantly clear. The ED has a task on its hand. What we need to wait and watch out for is whether the Enforcement Directorate in this case is substantially able to prove the charges in a court of law, something which has proven to be very, very tricky. But one thing is assured, there are more political fireworks in the days to come. With that, we are slipping into a very short break.